Hello and thank you. My name is Scott Kozak. I'm the Director of Investor Relations at Assure Holdings, and I'm looking forward to taking through our presentation today. So Assure Holdings is a healthcare services provider. We provide intraoperative neuromonitoring services in complex invasive procedures. We're dual listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange Venture as well as the OTCQB. We have grown rapidly in recent years. Since 2017, our compound annual growth rate has been over 80%. We've also grown rapidly as it relates to the number of surgeons we work with. We are accredited by the Joint Commission. We take tremendous pride in our clinical excellence and quality of service, and that has helped us to a 97+% surgeon retention rate. And our goal and objective for 2021 is to uplist to a major US exchange. In terms of what intraoperative neuromonitoring is, essentially it's the use of electrophysiological methods, EEG and EMG are the nomenclature, and we observe the integrity of neurostructures during surgery. So these are complex invasive surgeries, think brain surgery, open heart surgery, deep spinal surgery, full hip replacement surgery, things of that nature. Approximately 1.4 million cases used IONM services last year. We expect a slightly higher number this year. The growth in the number of surgeries relates to a larger geriatric population, one with more instances of chronic disease. Often those are related. Historically, most of our IONM services have been provided in the realm of orthopedic and spinal surgeries. We are starting to move into ENT, neuro, and vascular, and we see a lot of opportunity in those surgical verticals. In terms of how IONM works and also how we make money, this is the story of this slide. So on the lower left-hand side in the blue box, the person at the computer is an Assure technologist. This is an Assure employee, W-2. We hire trained certified technologists. There are only 5,000 board trained certified technologists across the US. We employ 56 of them. We are absolutely focused on quality of service. In addition, so this technologist communicates in real time with the surgeon. We pair our technologist to work with the same surgeon on every one of their surgeries. That fosters trust and continuity, which is really valuable for the surgeon. The other part of the IONM service puzzle is the offsite neurologist. Today, that is a contractor. We intend to bring that position in-house starting later this year, hiring our first neurologist. The neurologist and the technologist act as sort of a belt and suspenders method where they're monitoring the neural gateways during these complex surgeries, looking at the nervous system, gauging for risk, gauging for disruptions, communicating in real time with the surgeon. So, this is a very important aspect for surgeons and something they really look for support on. In terms of our key stakeholder groups, their pain points and how Assure helps to solve them, we've already talked a little bit about the surgeon, but they're looking for trained certified technologists that are able to provide and add value to them during their surgeries, help them avoid risk, avoid making mistakes. In addition, Assure provides a revenue split for surgeons associated with the professional bill. That's the neurologist piece, the offsite neurologist piece. That's something that they're not able to get with other IONM service providers. From a hospital's perspective, increasingly we're speaking with hospitals about outsourcing their entire intraoperative neuromonitoring services needs. And the reason for that is primarily twofold. One, it's not a core competency for hospitals. It's something that often they're using contractors themselves in order to fill. And secondly, it's often a cost center for hospitals. And we believe that we're going to increasingly partner with hospitals in 2021 and beyond as they see the value in our offering. The third group are insurance companies. Insurance companies, their clients, their customers, of course, are patients, and they're looking for best possible clinical outcomes for their patients. They want to avoid injuries to their patients during surgery that could result in things like partial paralysis, stroke, full paralysis or worse. So they're very interested in partnering with an IONM company like Assure that has such value and quality of service. And our fourth stakeholder group are patients themselves. And as you can imagine, they're very focused on the best possible clinical outcomes. They also benefit. Assure provides operating services, including patient advocacy. So we communicate with patients before their surgery, after surgery, to communicate not only what to expect from the surgery, but also how to navigate the billing and insurance process. And to be clear, Assure never bills the patients. For commercial insurance claims, we bill the insurance company. For public insurance claims, in our case, typically Medicare, we bill the hospitals. We do not engage in balance billing or surprise billing in any way. In terms of trends in the IONM industry, this is a very large market and it's a growing market. The outsource market is valued at about $1 billion per year, growing at a CAGR of about 10% per year. And there's a similar sized in-source market. That's primarily hospitals doing IONM services themselves. Intraoperative neuromonitoring is considered the standard of care, and it's because we save healthcare systems money and we improve patient outcomes by reducing surgical complications. The American Society of Anesthesiologists recommends IONM for complex surgeries. It's increasingly integrated into medical school curriculums. And the other point I'd like to make about the IONM industry is it's highly fragmented, it's chronically undercapitalized, and we believe it's ripe for industry consolidation and represents a substantial M&A opportunity. Looking next at the competitive landscape, our competitors are really, you could divide them into three groups. The first group are IONM specific companies, and that includes Assure. So our largest IONM specific company peer is MedSurant. They're going to do about 40,000 cases this year. And that's just really a drop in the bucket of the overall market, which is about 1.4 million cases using IONM services in the United States this year. Beyond MedSurant, there's a few other fairly large players like National, but we really see the majority is these very small, almost mom and pop type local players in cities or regions, maybe in a state or two. These are typically very undercapitalized. They are suffering from the impacts of COVID. They're using third-party billing companies and have difficult accounts receivable collections. They're out of network, and they represent really attractive M&A targets for Assure going forward. The second group of competitors are hospital providers. This is more of the in-sourced market. And again, we think there's a lot of opportunity to work with hospitals and start outsourcing pieces of these business, facility-wide contracts. And that's because it's typically not a core competency of hospitals, and it's also generally a cost center for hospitals. And we think there's a lot of opportunity here. The third group of competitors are bundled providers, and the two largest IONM providers are included in this group, NuVasive, which is publicly traded in specialty care. These both do about 120,000 cases per year. Again, considering it's a $1.4 million market, they represent 8 to 10% of the market. This is just very, very highly fragmented. They do IONM. They also do many other things outsourced in the operating room, from blood perfusion to medical devices to rods and screws. On this next slide, we look at where Assure is today and how we intend to expand. The green states represent places where Assure is today. It's about 2.5 years ago, we were entirely in Colorado and nowhere else. Today, we're in 8 states total. The yellow and blue states are where we intend to expand to next. Those are nearer term opportunities. We're also extending our reach within existing states. We think we're going to penetrate into new surgical verticals outside of spine and orthopedic, including vascular and ENT. As I mentioned, we think there's a lot of M&A opportunities. We're also looking as an organic growth driver to expand via a distribution network. So partnering with medical device distributors who themselves have strong surgeon relationships to sell in Assure IONM services to their surgeons. In return, they'll receive a small portion of the revenue from the surgeries that their surgeons use Assure IOM services for. And again, we intend to be a premier provider of IOM services for entire facilities. That was the hospital offering I mentioned previously. Next, we look at our increased number of cases. As I mentioned, we've grown very rapidly, almost doubling in 2018, more than doubling in 2019. We think we're going to grow by more than 50% this year, and that's even with the impact COVID has had on elective procedures. Assure was impacted by COVID, particularly in March and April. We saw a reduction in terms of elective procedures in our case count of approximately 75%. That has snapped back beginning in May through current. We've returned to pre-pandemic levels. In fact, we announced via press release earlier this week that we had a record number of procedures in the month of October after having a record number of procedures in the month of September. Of course, we are looking carefully at how COVID continues to evolve, and a future flare-up could certainly impact our business. We don't think it'll impact our business the same way it did in March and April for a variety of reasons, but it certainly could influence us around the margins, and it's something we're evaluating carefully. For those of you that listen to Assure conference calls, our three primary objectives will be well known to you. We update these on a quarterly basis. Our primary objectives are first, expanding scale. We've talked about this. That's expanding organically, expanding through M&A, seeking facility-wide outsourcing agreements with hospitals, and also expanding through our channel partnerships with medical device distributors. Secondly, expanding in-network agreements. So Assure, like almost every other company in intraoperative neuromonitoring, had been almost entirely out of network. And out-of-network billing is a difficult process. While we're deemed a medical necessity and insurance companies do so before we get even involved in a case, they have not agreed on a specific time frame for when we'll be paid or how much will be paid. And therefore, it's a very slow process for collections that often leads to disputes that take time to find resolution. So we brought a couple of individuals inside our organization from Air Methods, which is a air ambulatory services company that had been dealing with similar issues a decade or so ago. Our CFO, Trent Carmen, our VP of Managed Services, named Paul Webster, both came from Air Methods. They have a lot of experience with healthcare billing. They have a lot of experience bringing over $1 billion of revenue that had been out of network at Air Methods in network over a 5 to 10 year span. And that led to a big valuation increase at Air Methods from a couple $100 million market cap to over a $2 billion private equity exit. We think they can do similar for us at Assure, and we're already seeing progress. We signed our first in-network agreement in later 2019. We've signed several more so far in 2020. Today, approximately 20% of our commercial insurance revenue on a run rate basis is in network. We expect to increase that to 30% by the end of this year. We expect to increase it to almost 50% by the end of next year. And this is a competitive advantage for Assure. We don't know of hardly any, if any, in-network agreements that other intraoperative neuromonitoring service providers have today. Our third objective is cash collections, accelerating cash collections. Previously, Assure, like nearly every company in intraoperative neuromonitoring, had used a third-party billing collections partner. And it did not work out well for Assure. It led to collections issues. It led to accounts receivable write-downs. We've since brought that function inside the organization. Starting earlier this year, we hired a very seasoned, accomplished healthcare billing person to be our VP of Revenue Cycle Management. And we've already seen an acceleration in cash collections. In the first 3 quarters of 2020, Assure has collected $10.1 million. In full year 2019, all 12 months, we've collected $8 million. It's going to take time, particularly to collect on claims from 2016, 2017, 2018 that have already been written down, but we are going to continue trying to collect on them. We've already collected $1.4 million from 2016 and 2017 written down claims so far in 2020. We think we're going to have similar meaningful success for 2018 claims that have been written down. And it's a focus for us going forward. Our process today is much more automated, much less manual, and with in-network agreements, which makes the process of collecting a lot less complex, a lot less cantankerous between us with the insurance company. We think it's really important to partner with insurance companies, and we think it's going to really improve our cash collections on the go forward. On the next slide, we look at our primary revenue growth streams. We already talked about this briefly, so I'll touch on it here. Organic growth, extending within states, expanding into new states, our distributor channel program, M&A, our hospital offering, and then capturing a larger share of the professional bill. That relates to bringing an off-site neurologist function inside the organization, doing our own telehealth offering, where we're just displacing a contractor. We see a lot of potential there as well. On the next slide, we profile our one acquisition to date. This was something that we embarked on in late 2019. We acquired a business called Neuropro. And Neuropro was a kind of best-in-breed local provider in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. It was attractive to us for a number of reasons. One, we could increase our scale by almost 50% with this acquisition. Secondly, they had a very attractive revenue mix. About 80% of their revenue was from commercial insurance payers, which typically have much more favorable revenue profile and profit profile. Only about 20% was public insurance. And thirdly, Neuropro had really excellent surgeon relationships, including with the very prestigious, world-renowned Texas Back Institute. That has already helped us grow in Texas. We were expanding this business. Texas is already now our largest state, and these relationships that they have built have been a springboard for us to grow in the state. We were able to acquire Neuropro for $7.7 million, and this was a business, and this is unaudited because this was a privately held, but they had $6 million of incremental cash receipts in 2019, $3 million in cash net income, so we were able to buy them for less than 3 times. We were able to get vendor financing to do so. So this was very accretive and very attractive for our shareholders, and we think there are other deals like this of different sizes available in the ILNM industry, and that's something we're eager to pursue. On the next slide, we take a little closer look on our emerging telemedicine offering. Again, this is bringing the off-site neurologist function inside the organization with our own neurologist, something we plan to launch in 2020. This is important for a number of reasons. One, it allows us to control quality of service, both from the technologist side as well as from the neurologist side. And that's really important as we negotiate new in-network agreements. That's something insurance companies are asking for. How we plan to roll this out is first, our neurologists will be working on Assure patients, Assure customers. But we think that there's a lot of opportunity later next year and into 2022 to not only work with Assure patients, but other ILNM providers, patients that need a contractor, which can be us in this case, for the off-site neurologist piece of the ILNM services, and for hospitals as well that need off-site neurology services for ILNM and for other needs. In terms of financial results, in 2019, the company generated about $17.7 million in revenue, $2.5 million in net income, $5.7 million in adjusted EBITDA. And that includes the impact of a roughly $9 million write-down for a single insurance payor in which we have a dispute. That dispute and the communication and negotiation remains ongoing. We do intend and expect to collect a meaningful portion of that sum. We think ultimately this agreement will result in Assure having a in-network agreement with this particular provider in the state of Louisiana. And it's something we're working on literally in the days and weeks to come. Factors supporting improving top-line results going forward. The first is continuing to expand scale, both organic and M&A growth. Secondly, We have proactively made the decision to adjust downward our revenue accrual rate. We now have that accrual rate at a similar level to other IO&M companies across the industry. It's also at a rate similar to where we're signing new and network agreements. So we think we've really minimized downward risk here at these levels, and we think there's upside lift potential as well. Recovery of write-downs. I already mentioned a little bit about our expectations and goals as it relates to the write-down from the single insurer in Louisiana. We also wrote down substantially in the second quarter of 2020 our 2018 receivables, and that relates to the third-party billing provider that we had been using. When we brought those files in-house earlier this year, we found, unfortunately, that in 80+% of the cases, these files had barely been worked at all. They'd barely been opened. We've since rebilled in March and April of this year. We do expect to collect a meaningful portion of our 2018 outstanding claims, but it will take time. We decided to bite the bullet entirely in the second quarter rather than having a drip of write-downs throughout 2020. And that would be necessary because as a company, our policy is to write down any receivable automatically once it's aged 2 years. But again, we are still pursuing these collections, and we intend and believe we'll collect a meaningful portion of them later this year and early next year. And then finally, we think signing more in-network agreements will be a factor in improving top-line results going forward. We've already made progress on this front, and we expect more progress quickly in the go forward. From a balance sheet perspective, we've been strengthening from a capitalization point of view, $4.1 million loan facility. We have a PPP loan related to the CARES Act. We expect to be forgiven. $3.4 million raised from convertible debt offering. That was mostly to pay for the Neuropro acquisition, improving cash flow. From a management team perspective, John Farlinger, our CEO, has substantial experience on turnaround stories, also on emerging growth stories, and leading those to private equity exits. Trent Carman and Paul Webster, I mentioned before, came to us from Air Methods, a lot of experience in healthcare, a lot of experience bringing out-of-network revenue in-network, doing the same here for us. Sean Blosser was hired in April. He comes from the private equity side. He has extensive experience related to healthcare billing and out-of-network billing, making processes more automated. We're already seeing results from that front. We're really pleased with that. And then in terms of board of directors, I'll just touch on this quickly because I know we want to get a little Q&A, but Stephen Summer was the president of the Colorado Hospital Association. Dr. Chris Romana is a very well-respected, prestigious neurosurgeon who is part of our medical advisory board. With that, let me turn the call over and address some Q&A if we have a few minutes.
We got about 1 minute. Does
Okay.
anybody have a question here that I know we have a number of shareholders here, but
I have a question. Can you tell me what insurance companies he's currently in network with and who he's trying to get in network with?
did you hear that?
I'm sorry, I did not.
She's wondering if you can give us any color on the insurance companies you are in network with and who maybe you're working on.
Sure. Well, we haven't named all of them, but for example, one of them is Aetna of Michigan, another is First Health. We're negotiating and have agreements both directly with providers as well as with aggregators, third-party administrators, and we intend to sign more deals with both groups going forward.
Okay. Well, Scott, I think we're just about out of time, so thanks again for being willing to come and talk to everybody. You know, we have a pretty good group of people that are listening remotely as well as here in the room, and you know, we'll try to see if we have some additional questions that we can forward to you and maybe get out, you know, either through my site or through the conference site as well. So again, thanks for being with us, and we appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And if you have further questions, please contact myself or John Farlinger. We'll be happy to follow up with you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.